The portal opens, the room was silent, except for the low hum of the machine. A wide circle of light floated in the air, its edges moving like liquid silver every few seconds. It sent a small wave of energy through the floor, making the metal plates vibrate. The alien scientists stood in a half circle around it, their eyes fixed on the swirling light. This was the portal, the first working gateway their people had ever made. For months, they had been testing, running numbers, checking energy levels. Now finally, it was open. Commander Ryle stepped forward, his dark armor catching the glow. Behind him, a large screen showed strange readings, and an image of what was on the other side. It was not empty space, not another barren moon. It was a world. The screen showed green land, tall plants, and moving shapes. A wide blue sky stretched above it, and white clouds drifted slowly. The commander's second-in-command spoke in a low voice. Life signs. Strong and many. The room grew even quieter. They had found living creatures before, but never a world so alive. Something about it felt different. Raul turned to the exploration team. 5 of them stood ready, wearing the lightest gear possible. No weapons, no armor, no tools. The portal destroyed all artificial fabric and metal. Anything made by their technology would not survive the crossing. Only their own bodies could pass through unchanged. The youngest of the team, Kellen, shifted nervously. His green skin glowed faintly in the light of the portal. "This feels wrong," he whispered. "We know nothing about what is there." An older scout, Vora, placed a hand on his shoulder. "That is why we are going, young one." Her voice was calm, but her eyes stayed on the swirling light. She had crossed dangerous worlds before, but this felt heavier. The commander stepped closer to the team. "Your mission is simple," he said. "Go through, gather what you can, return within 1 cycle." He paused, then added, "And be careful, the readings are strange, too strange." The team nodded, though their hearts were heavy. Each of them wondered the same thing. Why did the scans show moving shapes that did not match any known creature? A warning tone filled the air. The portal's edges flared bright white, meaning it was ready for crossing. One by one, the team approached. The light seemed to pull them in. The moment Kellen stepped forward, the sound of the portal grew louder, almost like a deep breath. Then, in a flash, they were gone, swallowed by the light. For a few seconds, there was nothing, no sound, no movement, no sense of up or down. Then they were standing on soft ground, warm air wrapped around them, full of strange smells, some sweet, some sharp. Above them was the sky, vast and blue, the sun spilling golden light across the land. Kellen's eyes widened. "It's beautiful," he whispered. The others agreed, but no one smiled for long. In the distance, something moved through the tall plants. They could hear the leaves brushing together. A slow, steady sound. The team froze. The movement stopped, as if whatever it was had noticed them too. Vora held up a hand for silence. The sound started again, but this time it came from behind them. It was faint, but it was there. A second set of footsteps. The leader of the team, Lauren, scanned the trees around them. He saw nothing but shadows. Yet the feeling was clear. They were not alone. A low, heavy breath reached his ears. The sound was close, far too close. Kellen felt the hairs on his neck rise. The team began moving slowly, trying to reach an open space. Their bare feet pressed into the soil, leaving soft marks behind. Lauren's eyes caught something strange. Another footprint in the dirt. It was deep, with 5 toes much longer than theirs. It was fresh, the edges sharp. Whoever had made it was near, before they could speak. A sharp crack echoed from the trees. A branch breaking. All of them turned at once. The shadows shifted. For one moment, Kellen thought he saw the shape of a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, standing perfectly still. Then the light changed, and the figure was gone. The forest fell silent again. Only the wind moved through the leaves. The aliens looked at each other. They had trained for dangerous worlds, but this was different. They were unarmed, in an unknown land. and something here was already watching them. The youngest whispered the question all of them feared. What if it's hunting us? No one answered. Instead, they began moving again. More quickly this time. Every sound, every shadow seemed alive above. A bird-like creature cried out, and the sound made Kellen flinch. The forest closed around them. The path grew narrow, forcing them closer together. The warm sunlight faded under the thick leaves. Kellen felt the air grow heavier. Somewhere, hidden by the green, something breathed, slow and patient. And as they walked deeper, none of them noticed the set of eyes following them from the dark. Asterisk first steps on Earth. The ground was soft under their feet. Every step sank a little into the soil, leaving clear marks. A faint mist floated between the plants, wrapping around their legs as they moved. Strange shapes rose above them, tall. Green towers with wide leaves that reached for the sun. They had never seen plants grow so high. The air was thick, heavy with smells they could not name. Some scents were sweet, like the inside of a rare fruit. Others were sharp, like metal that had just been cut. Small flying creatures darted around them, their wings making a fast buzzing sound. Each one was a flash of color, red, yellow, blue, colors brighter than the alien eyes were used to. Lauren, the team leader, kept scanning the horizon. His eyes were trained to spot danger, yet here, the world seemed to hide everything. The plants moved softly in the breeze. Shadows shifted even when there was no wind. Every time they turned, they thought they saw something just behind them, but it was gone. Vora bent down to study a cluster of strange flowers. Their petals were wide and soft, yet their center held small spines. She reached out, and the flower closed in an instant. Snapping shut like a trap, Kellen jumped back, his voice sharp. It's alive. Vora gave a short nod, and it's hungry. The team moved on without touching anything else. Then they saw it, a print in the mud. It was large, five-toed. Deep in the ground, Lauren knelt to measure it with his hand. It was longer than his entire palm. Fresh too, the water in the print had not yet drained away. Something walks here, he said quietly. Something heavy. They followed the prints for a short while. The path led them between two massive trees. The air grew cooler, but also darker. The sunlight above was blocked almost completely. And then they heard it, a low, distant thump. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. Like slow footsteps on soft earth. Kellen's throat tightened. Should we call out? He whispered. No, Lauren said firmly. If it wants to be seen, it will. They stood still, listening. The sound faded away, replaced by the rustle of leaves high above. But the feeling of being watched did not fade. They moved again. This time more quickly. Vora took the lead, stepping carefully to avoid snapping twigs. She stopped suddenly and raised her hand. Ahead, through the trees, was movement, not plant, not animal, a figure, tall and thin, standing half hidden behind a trunk. It did not move. It did not make a sound, but they could feel its gaze like heat on their skin. The figure stepped forward slowly. Light touched its face, not scales, not fur, but smooth skin. Eyes like dark glass, arms long and strong. It wore nothing, carried nothing. Yet the way it stood was not like any creature they had studied. It stood like it understood. The aliens froze. The figure tilted its head, studying them with a strange calm. Then, without warning, it moved not toward them, but past them. Its arm flashed forward. A sharp spear of wood struck a nearby tree with a deep thud. Kellen spun around to see what the spear had hit. Curled on the tree trunk was a long, scaled creature, its mouth opening to show black fangs. It fell to the ground, twitching. The human, for that is what it was, stepped to the spear, pulled it free, and looked at them again. He said nothing. He only smiled, slow and knowing. And in that moment, the aliens understood. This world was not empty. It was claimed. The encounter for a long moment, no one moved. The human stood in the middle of the path, his bare feet sinking slightly into the damp soil. The spear rested easily in his hand, as if it was a part of him. His eyes moved slowly from one alien to another. They were not the eyes of a frightened animal. They were the eyes of someone measuring. The forest around them seemed to fade into silence. No birds called, no leaves rustled. Only the sound of distant water could be heard, a slow, steady flow. Lauren felt the weight of that gaze and realized something unsettling. This human was not surprised to see them. He was expecting them. Kellen took a half step back, his instinct screamed to turn and run through the portal. But Vora's hand gripped his arm, holding him in place. She had faced predators before, and she could see it in the human's stance. He was not a predator looking for food. He was something else entirely. The human raised the spear and pointed it, not at them, but to the ground beside his feet. There, half hidden under leaves, was another of those snake-like creatures, its body coiled, ready to strike. The human pressed the spear down on its neck with precise force. A single quick motion ended the threat. Without a word, he stepped back, letting the alien see what he had done. It was a silent message. I could have done this to you, but I didn't. The tension was thick. Lauren made the smallest gesture of thanks, placing his palm against his chest. The human's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to understand the meaning. Then, to their surprise, he made a sound, a single word. The tone was low, deep, and carried more weight than the aliens could explain. It was not their language, yet the feeling behind it was clear. It was not a threat, but a command, a direction. He stepped aside and pointed into the deeper forest. Then he began walking, not looking back. The choice was simple: follow him or be left alone in a dangerous world. Vora glanced at Lauren. He gave a small nod, and the team began moving. They kept their distance, but the human's pace forced them to quicken their steps. The ground became uneven, roots twisting across the path. The air grew cooler, shadows stretching long between the trees. Kellen couldn't stop looking at the man's back. There was something strange about his skin, pale in some places, marked with faded lines in others. Old scars, some straight like blade cuts, others jagged like animal claws. This was a man who had survived more than they could imagine, and yet he walked as if the forest belonged to him. After a while, the human slowed and glanced over his shoulder. His eyes locked on Kellen. For a moment, it felt as if the rest of the world had vanished. Then the human's gaze dropped, not to Kellen's face, but to his hands. It was quick, but deliberate, as if the human was checking for something. Kellen felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Though he did not know why, the path curved, leading them toward the sound of running water. Soon they reached a wide stream, its surface sparkling in the filtered sunlight. The human crouched by the edge, dipped his hands into the water, and drank deeply. Then he pointed at the stream and stepped back. The aliens hesitated, but Vora was the first to kneel and drink. The water was cold and clean. It washed away the dryness in their throats. For a moment, it felt safe, almost peaceful. Then, the human's head snapped up. He was looking toward the deeper forest again. His grip on the spear tightened. The aliens froze. They could hear it now, a deep, heavy sound, the same thumping they had heard before. Slow, steady, and coming closer. The human's jaw tightened. Without looking at them, he began moving again, faster this time. The aliens followed without question. They did not know what was coming, but from the look in the human's eyes, they knew one thing. Whatever it was not friendly. The test of trust. The forest closed in around them. The path the human chose was narrow, twisting between trees so old their roots rose like walls from the ground. The air smelled different here. Damp, almost metallic. Somewhere far off, a low roar echoed, not quite an animal, not quite the wind. Every sound seemed heavier, as if the forest itself was listening. The human moved quickly, but not carelessly. Every step he took seemed chosen, every pause deliberate. He never glanced back to see if they followed, yet he always slowed just enough for them to keep up. It was as if he already knew their pace. Their limits. That thought made Lauren uneasy. At one point, the human stopped and crouched beside a patch of strange moss. He touched it lightly, then smeared a bit across the inside of his arm. The green paste sank into his skin, leaving a faint dark stain. Vora watched closely, wondering if it was some kind of protection. The human looked up at her, studied her for a heartbeat. Then, without a word, he stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. Before she could pull away, he smeared the same moss onto her skin. His eyes locked on hers as if telling her, "You'll need this." They walked for what felt like hours. Kellen noticed something unsettling. The forest was quieter here. No birds, no insect hum, no wind in the leaves. It was too still. Even their footsteps felt loud. Suddenly, the human stopped and held up one hand. The aliens froze. Without looking at them, he walked a few steps ahead, bent down, and picked something up from the ground. It was a small piece of black metal. Lauren's eyes widened. It was alien tech, their tech. The human turned it over in his hand. Then he tossed it into the bushes without interest, as if he'd seen such things before. The path began to slope upward, the trees thinning until they could see faint light ahead. They stepped into a small clearing. The human moved to the center and set his spear upright in the soil. Then he knelt, drawing shapes in the dirt with one finger. The aliens gathered around cautiously. At first, the marks meant nothing. Lines, circles, jagged patterns. Then Kellen realized it was a map. The shape showed the forest, the stream, and the path they had taken. And on one side of the map, far beyond where they had walked, was the swirling shape of the portal. But there was something else. Crude drawings of large shapes moving toward it. The shapes had teeth, claws, and long tails. Vora's chest tightened. These things were coming for the portal, and if they reached it, the aliens on the other side would be trapped or worse. The human's eyes moved from the map to their faces. He tapped the drawing of the beasts twice, then the symbol for the portal. Finally, he looked at Lauren and pointed to the aliens themselves. It was clear. He was telling them they would have to deal with this threat. But why would a human care about their portal? What did he gain by warning them? Before Lauren could speak, a sharp snap of wood came from the trees behind them. The human rose in one smooth motion. Spear in hand, his head turned slightly, listening. Then he gave them a look. Not fear, not anger, but a warning. A silent message that said, "Stay close and don't make a sound." The aliens obeyed. And as they followed him out of the clearing, Kellen realized something. They were trusting him more than their own orders, and they didn't even know his name. The night fire, the sun was falling behind the trees. Shadows stretched long across the forest floor, swallowing the path ahead. The human led them to a small hollow in the ground, rimmed with stones and shielded by thick branches overhead. Felt hidden, protected, yet every alien's eyes kept darting to the darkness beyond. Without a word, the human dropped his spear and began gathering pieces of dry wood. He moved with the quiet certainty of someone who had done this many times before. A spark came from two stones struck together. The aliens watched as a small flame was born. It grew quickly, licking at the wood, its light pushing the shadows back. The fire's glow painted the human's face in warm gold and deep black. For the first time they saw how young he truly looked. Yet the scars told another story, one of survival, of danger, of years spent fighting. The warmth of the fire was strange to them. On their world, heat came from machines, never from something so alive. The human sat cross-legged, pulling a strip of dried meat from a pouch made of plant fibers. He chewed slowly, then tossed a piece to Vora. She caught it, sniffed it, and looked at him carefully before taking a bite. The taste was strong and smoky. The human nodded once, a silent approval. After a while, he picked up a stick and began drawing in the dirt again. But this time, the shapes were different. Not a map, not a warning. This was a story. He drew a large circle, the portal. Then small figures, the aliens, stepping through it. Then larger shapes, the beasts, moving toward them. Finally, he drew himself between the two. Spear raised, Kellen stared at the picture. The meaning was clear. The human intended to stand between them and danger. But why? He didn't know them, didn't speak their language, and yet he was offering something close to protection, outside the circle of firelight. The forest whispered. Branches creaked. Leaves shifted. Sometimes the sounds came from one side, sometimes another. The human's eyes would flick toward the darkness. His hand never far from the spear. He didn't seem afraid. But he didn't seem relaxed either. It was as if he was waiting for something. Lauren leaned toward Vora and spoke in a low voice. He's protecting us. Vora nodded slightly. Or keeping us in one place. The thought made them both uneasy. The fire burned low. The human added more wood without looking at them. Then, in the quiet, a new sound reached their ears, a deep, rumbling growl from somewhere beyond the trees. It was answered by another. And another. The beasts were closer than they had thought. The human's head turned toward the sound. Slowly, he reached for his spear. His eyes met Lauren's, and for the first time, the alien leader felt it clearly. Not just a warning, not just a command. It was an unspoken promise. Stay near the fire, and you'll live. Asterisk, the threat revealed the night passed in pieces. Sleep came in short bursts, always broken by distant sounds. The fire had burned low, sending only small tongues of flame into the dark. The human was awake, sitting still, his spear across his knees. His eyes never stopped moving. When the first pale light of morning touched the forest, he stood. Without speaking, he motioned for them to follow. They left the hollow and moved through the trees. The air was cool, but heavy with a strange smell. It was sharp, almost sour, and it clung to the inside of their throats. They climbed a low ridge, the ground covered in damp leaves. At the top, the human crouched and waved them closer. From here, they could see far beyond the forest. And what they saw made Kellen's stomach twist. In the open valley below, massive shapes moved slowly toward the portal site. Each was taller than the highest tree, their long necks swaying as they walked. But it was not their size that made the aliens' blood run cold. It was the armor of thick, black scales, and the way their clawed feet crushed the ground with every step. The air trembled with their weight. One of the beasts lifted its head. Its jaws opened wide, revealing rows of curved teeth. A deep call rolled across the valley. It was answered by another, farther back, and another. The sound was like the earth itself warning of danger. Vora spoke in a low voice. Our weapons will not work here. Lauren nodded grimly. The portal stripped them. Kellen swallowed hard. Then, how do we stop them? The human turned at the sound of their voices. He could not understand their words, but he understood their fear. He pointed at the beasts, then at the ground near the ridge. With quick, sharp gestures, he made the shape of a snare, a trap. Then, he pointed at himself, stabbing the air with an invisible spear. It was clear. He intended to fight them here, not run, not hide, fight. The aliens exchanged glances. It was madness. But as they watched the beasts draw closer, they realized the truth. If the creatures reached the portal, their people would be trapped on this world. And if they were trapped here, they would not survive long. The human began moving quickly, searching the ridge for something. He cut vines from the trees, tested their strength with quick pulls. He sharpened long branches into spikes, setting them into the ground at an angle. Every motion was practiced, efficient. This was not the first time he had prepared for a hunt. The aliens hesitated for only a moment before joining him. Vora tied vines as she had seen him do. Kellen dragged heavy stones into place. Even Lauren worked alongside him, though he never took his eyes off the valley. The beasts were closer now. Their footsteps were steady, like the beat of a war drum. When the first shadow of the nearest beast touched the edge of the ridge, the human straightened and gripped his spear. His eyes met Lauren's for the briefest moment, and in that look was something unshakable. Not hope, not fear, but certainty. The kind of certainty that belongs to a creature who has fought this fight before. The HFY moment. The ground shook with every step of the beasts. Their long necks swayed. Their black scales glinted in the weak morning light. The air was thick with the sour scent of their breath. Kellen felt it in his bones. This was not a fight they should win. Yet the human stood tall, spear in hand, his feet set firm in the soil. He waited until the first beast's clawed foot came down within reach of the traps. Then, with a sharp motion, he yanked the vine hidden under the leaves. A line of sharpened spikes sprang upward, driving into the creature's leg. It bellowed. A deep, thunderous cry that shook the trees. The sound was so loud it felt like the sky was tearing. Before the others could recover, the human was already moving. He ran straight toward the wounded beast. The aliens shouted in alarm, but he didn't. Slow, at the last moment, he slid under its body, driving the spear upward between its armor plates. A roar of pain rolled across the valley as the beast stumbled. The ground trembled as it fell. The others turned toward the ridge, their huge eyes locking onto the small figure standing in their path. The human didn't back away. He moved along the ridgeline, forcing them to follow where the ground was unstable. The aliens realized he had led them into another trap. The soil here was soft, loose from the rain. The beast's weight made it collapse under them, sending two crashing into a deep pit. Lined with jagged stone, Lauren and Vora worked the vines to drop heavy logs into the pit. Kellen hurled stones to drive the third beast back, but the human didn't stop. He leapt onto the last creature's tail, climbing quickly along its spine. Every move was fast, precise, like he knew exactly where to place his hands and feet. At the base of its neck, he drove the spear down with all his strength. The beast convulsed, then slowly went still. When it was over, the valley was silent again. The human stepped away from the fallen creature, breathing hard but steady. The aliens could only stare. He was scratched, his skin marked with fresh cuts, but his eyes were calm, as if this was not a victory, but simply another day. He walked to the edge of the ridge and looked toward the portal. Then he turned to them, gave a short nod, and without a word, began walking back into the forest. The aliens watched him go, unsure if they should follow. Kellen's voice was low, almost a whisper. "We came to study." Vora's gaze stayed on the fading figure. "But we found a legend.